Imagine an island that once produced more sugar than any other place on Earth. An island so rich in white gold that it powered empires, financed revolutions, and shaped global trade for centuries. But what happens when the world suddenly loses its taste for sugar? Or worse, when politics decide the price of sweetness? This isn't just the story of Cuba's economy, it's the story of how one crop built a nation and then nearly destroyed it. This is the Cuban sugar crash. When sweet profits turned bitter. To understand Cuba's fall, we first have to understand its rise. For over 200 years, sugar wasn't just a product. In Cuba it was Cuba. In the 1800s, sugar plantations covered the island like a white blanket. From Spanish colonizers to American investors, everyone saw Cuba's soil as the perfect engine for wealth. And they were right. By the early 1900s, Cuba was the world's largest exporter of sugar, producing millions of tons every year. Sugar wasn't just an industry, it was an identity. But here's the twist. Behind every sweet success, there was bitterness. Enslaved Africans, brutal working conditions, and total dependence on global markets meant Cuba's prosperity was built on fragile foundations. Still, as long as demand stayed high, nobody questioned it until the world changed. The roots of Cuba's sugar economy reach deep into colonial history. After Haiti's revolution in 1791 destroyed the world's top sugar producer, Cuba stepped in to fill the gap, becoming the new sugar capital of the world. But there was a cost. Monoculture. Cuba stopped growing other crops. It didn't need to. Sugar was everything. By the early 20th century, sugar accounted for over 80% of Cuba's exports, and nearly a third of its GDP. The island became dangerously dependent on one product and one customer. That customer, the United States. When the U.S. won the Spanish-American War in 1898, Cuba gained independence. On paper, in reality, American companies poured into the island, buying up land and mills. By the 1920s, American corporations controlled about 60% of Cuba's sugar industry. They brought machines and capital, but also deep economic control. Cuba's economy became a mirror of U.S. interests. This created massive inequality. The sugar barons grew rich, while rural Cubans lived in poverty. But during good years, when sugar prices soared, it felt unstoppable. There was even a saying, "As goes sugar, so goes Cuba." And for a while, sugar went way up. World War I devastated European agriculture, and Cuba became the world's sugar lifeline. In 1920, sugar prices reached unprecedented highs. At the time, Cubans still called the dance of the millions. Fortunes were made overnight, but bubbles always burst. When sugar prices collapsed later that same year, the consequences were catastrophic. The price per pound fell from 22 cents to just 3 cents, nearly a 90% drop in months. Factories closed, plantations were abandoned, and banks failed. Cuba's economy, built on sugar, came crashing down. The dance of the millions turned into a national hangover. Cuba's dependence was now painfully clear. The government had no backup plan, and as Cuba reeled, the United States tightened its control, bailing out some industries but ensuring American dominance. It was the first warning sign of a pattern: overreliance, collapse, and control. Fast forward to 1959. Fidel Castro's revolution overthrows the Batista regime, promising a new Cuba free from American influence. The revolutionaries nationalize industries, including sugar mills. And suddenly, the U.S., Cuba's biggest buyer, cuts off trade completely. Sugar exports plummet, but once again, Cuba finds a lifeline, this time from the Soviet Union. Moscow steps in to buy Cuban sugar at prices far above the global market rate. It's a political deal. Cuba sends sugar, and in return, receives oil, machinery, and aid. For decades, this arrangement keeps Cuba afloat. But just like before, dependence was the silent killer. Now, it wasn't America holding the key, it was the Soviet Union. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapses, and with it, the Cuban sugar economy. Practically overnight, Cuba loses 85% of its trade. The guaranteed sugar prices vanish. The subsidies disappear. Factories stop running because there's no fuel, no parts, no market. Sugar production plunges from 8 million tons in the 1980s to just 3 million by the mid-90s. Becomes known as the special period, a polite term for one of the worst economic crises in Cuban history. People faced blackouts, food shortages, and mass unemployment. For the first time, Cuba had to confront a truth it had avoided for centuries. An economy built on one crop is an economy built on sand. In the 2000s, Cuba made a painful decision. The government shut down nearly half of its sugar mills, shifting resources to tourism and biotechnology. What was once the island's pride became its burden. Entire towns that depended on sugar disappeared almost overnight. By 2020, Cuba was producing less than 1/10 of what it did during its Soviet peak. The country that once fed the world's sweet tooth could no longer feed its own people. The white gold had turned bitter. Cuba's leaders tried to fix it, but with limited success. Every attempt to modernize the sugar industry failed. In 2021, Cuba announced it would import sugar, a symbolic defeat for a nation that once dominated the global market. The lesson was devastatingly clear. Economic independence requires more than just slogans. It requires flexibility and diversification. Now, you might think this is ancient history, but look closer. The pattern repeats everywhere. Venezuela built its wealth on oil, and when prices crashed, so did its economy. Saudi Arabia is racing to diversify before its oil runs out. Dependency breeds vulnerability. And it's not just nations. Think of Nokia, Kodak, or BlackBerry giants that collapsed because they failed to adapt. The Cuban sugar crash isn't just about sugar. It's a warning that no success is safe when it depends on one fragile source. Consider this: in 1959, sugar made up 80% of Cuba's exports. By 2020, that number was less than 1%. Between 1989 and 1993, Cuba's GDP fell by over 35%. When the industry collapsed, it wasn't just an economic loss, it was a cultural one. A way of life disappeared. Here are 3 lessons from this sweet failure. 1. Dependence is the enemy of resilience. Diversity isn't just about opportunity, it's about survival. 2. External aid always comes with strings attached. When your economy depends on another's favor, your independence is an illusion. 3. Prosperity without foresight is a trap. Short-term profits blinded Cuba's leaders to long-term risk. By the time the collapse came, it was already too late. In the story of the Cuban sugar crash, there's no single villain, just a cycle of overconfidence, dependence, and denial. It's easy to believe that success today will last forever, but history and Cuba prove otherwise, because in the world of economics, sweetness never lasts, and when it fades, it can leave a bitter taste for generations. So the next time you stir your tea, think of the sugar that once built an empire, and remember the island that paid the price. If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because every mystery of the past hides a warning for the future.